As Dr. Moore mentioned, he's been doing lectures during this time, also focusing on some of the other variables. What I am saying is that what we eat is a large, major contributor that no one wants to talk about. Just as excessive sugar causes diabetes, it's a major contributor to the mental illness and violence wreaking havoc in our communities. Here's why. When you consume processed sugar, it pulls nutrients and hormones out of the brain that controls behavior. You might want to write this down. Sugar diminishes GABA. That's an inhibitory transmitter that reduces feelings of anxiety and fear. Yeah. Sugar diminishes taurine, helps you deal with the stresses of life, controls temper tantrums and mood swings. This is what's going on in your brain when you're eating the Satanic American diet. It diminishes glutamine, which controls behavior such as paying attention and aggressiveness. It diminishes vitamin B6, which regulates serotonin, the feel-good hormone. The sugar diminishes melatonin, which is essential for regulating blood pressure, aggressive behavior, depression, growth and development in children. It diminishes glycine, which helps you control nervous disorders and mental breakdowns. Sugar diminishes iron, which controls conduct, disruptive behavior, restlessness, irritability, learning problems. Sugar pulls thiamine out of your brain, which causes children to be sensitive to criticism, have poor impulse control, they anger easily, aggressive, hostile, depressed, headaches, sleep disturbances. The Satanic American diet is sorcery. Everything that I just went over has been known for decades. That information I went over about sugar depleting nutrients, that came straight from the research of our now ancestor, the great Dr. Layla Africa. May he rest in peace. Food is being used as a form of epigenetics. This is biological warfare against the brains of the masses, especially our children. The human brain is the most complex structure known to humanity. Your brain, brothers and sisters, it is exquisitely dependent on the medicine foods of God. God put medicines in food that grow from earth. And even tiny amounts of unnatural foods can wreak havoc on our brains. Yeah, that destroys the moderation idol of the heart. Ain't no such thing as moderation except in our delusional mind. I hear what you're saying, but I'm going to eat a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Unfortunately, the body only knows two things. Is what you eating going to feed your brain, support the goals you have for your life? Or is what you eating contrary to your goals and is going to poison you? There is no gray area. There is no gray area. No, it'll wreak havoc on your brain. The damage will add up. The evidence indicates that our emotional well-being, your willpower, work ethic, determination, creativity, your intelligence, your focus depends on how well you feed your brain. The Satanic American diet makes it impossible for the brain to function properly. If you don't feed your brain correctly, you're not going to function properly in everyday life. Well, I'm just doing fine, minister. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm functioning fine. Or you really? Or have we embraced the abnormal as normal? I challenge anyone in here, start eating to live. And if you think you're operating at a high level now, you start feeding your brain correctly to take you to a whole nother level. Trust me. The Satanic American diet is SAD. is beyond sad. It's chemical terrorism. Did you know that our government counts ketchup and French fries as vegetables? Did you know that even with them counting French fries and ketchup as vegetables, most Americans only consume 5% of their calories from fresh fruits and vegetables? So if you take away the French fries and the ketchup, most Americans are consuming less than 2% of their total calories from the medicine foods of God. The way we eat and live is not of God. The Word of God promises health to our body and strength to our bones. If we allow Him to direct our paths, we are not allowing God to direct us in the way that we eat and live. The standard American diet, it doesn't give our brains the nutrients and the fatty acid balance that it needs to function properly. Chronic anger, depression, and mental inflexibility, if you're suffering from those are subclinical signs of nutritional deficiency that is far too common in our nation. If you don't like the video about fried chicken, then what you watching it for? I mean, I have a whole slew of people that watch every minute of my video just to get mad at me. The most important nutrients to feed your brain and the brains of your children are phytochemicals. Repeat that after me. Phytochemicals. Phyto means plant. Chemicals, that's another word for drug. There's two types of drug. If you take a drug that harms you, that's a poison. If you take a drug that heals you, that's a medicine. So phytochemicals are medicines that God put in plant foods. They're not optional for optimal brain function. We must eat the medicine foods of God. Your central nervous system contains 100 billion cells called neurons. Phytochemicals are required for the prevention of brain pathology. We are what we eat. It's bad enough if you go into Whole Foods or Whole Check, and it's bad enough that they sell you all this organic junk food. But the regular processed foods contain over 10,000 FDA-approved toxic chemicals. So the very agency which is supposed to be protecting us, they are nothing more but bodyguards for Big Pharma in the food industry. And that's why I call the FDA the Franken Food and Death Administration. This is the hardest part of this lecture for me to get through, and that's focusing on the psychiatric industry in relation to our children. So bear with me. We have as many as 1 in 8 adolescents, young adults, diagnosed as clinically depressed. And many more have milder forms of mood disorders and learning disabilities. Brothers and sisters, I cannot believe this, but clinical depression is now the leading disability in children ages 5 and older. Psychiatric drug use is rampant in the United States. 1 out of 6 Americans are taking some form of psych drug. 1 out of 6. This is highly concerning because of the poor safety and effectiveness of these drugs. But what's even more concerning is the number of children taking these dangerous psych drugs. We have over 1 million children younger than age 6 taking psych drugs. We have hundreds of thousands of babies taking psych drugs. We have over 4 million children between the age of 6 and 12 taking psych drugs. And most of the drugs that's being prescribed is for anxiety. So they're giving 6-month-old babies psych drugs for anxiety. And it's much worse because these legal drug dealers called doctors, legal drug dealing, and they're prescribing children off-label psych drugs for off-label purposes. So that means they're just giving them the drugs, even when the drugs have nothing to do with the condition that they have. So they're experimenting on the brains of our children, like lab rats. What type of outcome are we going to have from these type of experiments? They don't know and they don't care. Because it's all about the love of money. The only sector within the Western sickness and death care industry that is more wicked than the psychiatric industry is the vaccine industry. The vaccine industry is literally child sacrifice. That's all it is. It's satanic child sacrifice ritual. Scientific study published in 2011 examined the consumption of many of our favorite junk foods that we eat and we feed our children. Hamburgers, pizzas, hot dogs, pastries, donuts, crackers and chips. And they followed them for 6.2 years, and they found a direct link to depression. 2015, they did a study. They looked at all these sugary sweets we're addicted to. Here's what they found. You can track a person's depression based off the dose that they get from the sugar. We are underestimating the long-term effects that these frankenfoods are having on the mental health of our children. Throughout the body, any amount of excessive sugar is harmful. Any amount. If you elevate your blood sugar for just an instant, it can instantly lead to mental pathology. Again, the moderation diet does not work. Instantly lead. Once again, with this knowledge, why are people fighting me when I do a video going against the ice cream truck? You all have no idea why my job as your minister of wellness is so difficult. There was a brother that commented on one of my live streams, and he said, well, minister of wellness, there are some herbs that could help you grow your hair back. Because here I am in my mid-30s with no hair. And I told that brother, I said, brother, let me tell you something. I'm saying ain't no herb, ain't nothing gonna help overpower me losing my hair over the stress of trying to spend my whole life convincing black folk to stop eating barbecue ribs and fried chicken. My hair is just a lost cause. Brain imaging study showed that the ability to process emotion is compromised by too much sugar in the blood. It can lead to sadness and anxiety, and you don't have to be a diabetic. It leads to impaired thinking and negative behavior. You all know this is true. Come on now. You eat something sweet and you feel like crap a few hours later. Am I right? This one will knock your socks off. They did a study and they analyzed the consumption of soda and behavior problems in 5-year-olds. Listen, they did not believe that drinking soda can cause negative behavior in 5-year-olds. So they looked at it and said, well, it has to be a poor home environment. Maybe the kids are watching too much TV. They found that the strongest correlation between behavior problems in 5-year-olds was with drinking the soda. And not just the soda, any junk food eating during formative years of life can cause mental impairment. Why? Well, it's been known for years. Too much sugar in the brain causes psychological problems. Alterations in mood, irritability, and aggressive and violent behavior. Come on now, watch the stupid Snickers commercial. Remember the Snickers commercial? Yeah. Young man, strong young man, and he turns into a grouchy old woman because he don't have his Snickers. The video is telling you right there. Because what is a Snickers? Look at the back of a Snickers. There's a bunch of chemicals and sugar. So you're telling me that I don't eat chemicals and sugar, I'm going to become schizophrenic, bipolar. I'm going to hallucinate all in an instant. And then as soon as you give me the chemicals and the sugar, it'll instantly go away. Now, what's happening is called hypoglycemia. When you shoot your brain up with that sugar, the pancreas panics, excretes insulin, and insulin drops the sugar out of the brain. Your brain is fueled by two things, sugar and fats. But it has to be the right type of sugar and the right type of fats. So when your brain loses that energy, oh yes, you would immediately start feeling it in your behavior. And too many of us in our communities, that hypoglycemia, they'll sit there getting a rage and snap and shoot you right in the face. Alcohol is nothing but liquid sugar also. The essential fatty acids, very important. Deficiencies in icosahexaenoic acid and dicosapentaenoic acid is one of the strong promoters of depression. This is very important. Essential fatty acids that fuel your brain. When you have an imbalance of omega-6 to omega-3, that also negatively impacts your brain. Fried foods. My favorite part of the lecture. Fried foods damage the brain because they're mostly omega-6 oils. Omega-3s are in vegetables, walnuts, flax seeds, and chia seeds. Fried foods are linked to birth defects, autoimmune disease, and cancer. When you are deficient in the essential fatty acids, and you have an imbalance of omega-6 to omega-3, serotonin, the feel-good hormone, cannot adequately pass between the neurotransmitters in your brain. And that can produce violent outbursts. The average American is consuming 400 calories of fried oils a day, leading to an extremely high imbalance of omega-6 to omega-3. Your level of omega-6 to omega-3 for optimal brain function should be under 4 to 1. That's what your level should be. You can get a blood test. 4 to 1. Guess what it is in many of our most violent communities? 25 to 1. 25 to 1. A large study of 800 military personnel found that they were 62% more likely to commit suicide if they have a low level of DHA and essential fatty acids. The homicide rate in the United States and UK tripled between 1961 and the year 2000. Guess what else tripled? Fried oils. National Institute of Health, they didn't believe it. National Institute of Health, who heads that now? The good old great false god of our times, good old Dr. Anthony Fauci, the head of the NIH, where we getting all of our information from for coronavirus. That man ain't said one thing about how to protect ourselves naturally. Haven't said one thing. You all know it'd be a cold day in hell before they let me stand up there before the nation and give you some real solutions. Somebody watching the live stream right now with a full-blown hazmat suit on, hiding in their closet, waiting for Dr. Fauci to give them the word that it's okay. And the orders from Dr. Fauci gonna be, okay, guys, it's safe to come out now. Go to Walgreens and get your shots. So the NIH, they looked at homicide rates and oil consumption. And guess what they found? A direct correlation between the amount of fried oils consumed and homicide. When you're deficient in these fatty acids, it leads to lower intelligence, poor school performance, aggression, hostility, depression, suicide, memory loss, cognitive decline, brain shrinkage, and dementia. After hearing this information about the damage that fried foods do to your brain, you have to be possessed by a special type of demon. To listen to this lecture, I'm going into you all's favorite story, listening to what I just went over. And you sit there and you just can't take it no more. The man's talking about my Kentucky Fried Death Shack and my poo-poo eyes. And you can't let me finish. I'm trying to teach you how to save our youth, and you can't let me finish. And then at first you mumble under your breath, he crazy. And then you yell out, I love. Fried chicken. Oh, man. I don't care how many black on black crime. I love fried chicken. I don't care how many of my kids are autistic. I love fried chicken. I don't care about the violence in the black on black. I love fried chicken. I don't care what you say, Minister. Well, I don't care how much is linked to cancer, diabetes, stroke, heart disease. I love. We're damaging our brains, and that's a true story. People, we're damaging our brains with these Franken foods, and then we get older and we're suffering from chronic disease and premature aging, and then you're going to lose your brain through dementia. You're going to lose your brain through dementia. There is nothing else that should matter in life that's more important than your health. Will never be any positive change. I know this is controversial. Knock on the doors of the most violent communities in our nation, and I promise you that 95% of the deaths are coming from what we eat. You all know it's true. I know it hurts. You know doggone well the vast majority of all people in this nation, you have a 1 billion times more chance of dying from your diet than you do the police. Alzheimer's disease and dementia is tripling between 2010 and 2050. Black folk, 2 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's and dementia. Go in these nursing homes, you see people in there in their 40s. Am I right? Diet and school performance. Children, when you feed your children the medicine foods of God, it is shown they do better academically. They're usually less hyperactive, less moody, and better behaved. Unless they're my hard-headed sons. Recent research has documented that when you increase vegetable consumption, it elevates the mood of the child. It allows them to function properly when it comes to dopamine and serotonin and other neurotransmitters in the brain. The brain-damaging diet we're eating, it is causing violence, and they've shown this in both animal studies and human studies. These Franken foods are destroying us from the inside out and affects how we treat each other. We cannot have a discussion on behavior problems in school without addressing diet. The teachers are trying to teach and their brains are malnourished. They're stressed out taking psych drugs. And then you have the children are malnourished taking psych drugs. It's a recipe for disaster. Researchers found that you can measure children on an IQ test, and they will score 8.5 years higher compared with those eating the satanic American diet. Listen, if you start feeding toddlers at a young age, you start feeding them healthfully, and you can notice the difference in their behavior by the time they're 7 years old. Exercise helps also when it comes to mental health. The more you exercise, the better it is for your mental capacity. What are most of our children doing? Sitting around all day playing video games and eating junk food. We're damaging our children. Keep them steel-toe boots on. We almost home. I'm bringing out 90% of the lunches we pack for our children. Junk food. They examined 12,000 students between the 5th and 8th grade. Guess what they found? The healthier the diet, they scored better on math, reading, and science. Infants who consume a healthy diet, they have higher verbal IQs and memory performance by 4 years of age. Here's what we're feeding our children: hamburgers, oily pizza, and other Franken foods. Guess what? You're scarring the brain of your children. You're damaging their hypothalamus. You're setting them up for failure in their academic lives. And then the school lunch program is an abomination. The foods that McDoodles won't take, that Burger Kill you won't take, KF Death Shack, and the International House of Pulmonary Heart Disease. What they won't accept, they'll take it and give it to our children in the schools. There should be no children in that lunch line. No children. That school lunch program should be bankrupt. Boycott, protest over everything else except the health of our own children. And that's the problem, is that before we talk about anybody else, we have to fix ourselves. We have to fix ourselves. Every single American tradition, this is how I feel like I live in a box sometimes. Every single American celebration, we have to eat ourselves to death. We have to destroy the brains of our children. And that's why I tell people all the time. I tell everybody, I love all of you all, but don't give my sons nothing. Don't feed them nothing, because you're probably going to mess it up. Can I feed them? Can they have it? Don't give them nothing. Unless you can go outside and you take a shovel and you can dig a hole in the dirt, plant seeds in it, and unless God grew them seeds into his medicine foods, unless you can pick something off of a tree, blessed by his hand, don't give him nothing. I'm not going to let nobody's inability to understand that what I feed them boys, my seed, my bloodline, is linked to their intelligence, their well-being, and their health. Over my dead body, will anybody destroy the health of my sons? Again, mothers, this is a hard saying. I say this with all compassion. You are responsible for the health of your child before they're even born. What you eat even before you conceive can affect the future health of your child. You all just don't understand how it feels to have the knowledge. Truly, the scriptures say, with much knowledge comes a burden. So how do you think it makes me feel when I see grandparents giving their grandchildren all these sugary candies, when I know that when that girl is born, the eggs for her future child is already in her? And them eggs can get damaged. You better stop listening to that genocidal Planned Parenthood. You better listen to what the Most High says about when life starts. Here's when life starts according to God. He told the prophet Jeremiah, before you were conceived in the womb, I knew thee. Before your parents even thought about conceiving, I ordained you, I blessed you to be a prophet among the nations. I declare the beginning from the end, way back in the beginning. Minister of Wellness, I called you to raise up your voice like a trumpet. Yeah, that's the biblical stance on when life begins. And it's important to understand that men is important too. Here's the difference. When I did this lecture 2 years ago, and I was talking about this, a sister got upset with me. She said, don't forget the men too, brother. And that is true to a certain extent. That men with the sperm, that can play a role. However, sperm regenerates. The eggs do not. Childhood cancer, leukemia is also linked to the diet that you consume. Yeah,